Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Welcome back to Purchasing Truth, everybody. I am Tom with your host, Bill Stierle. And, Bill, I'm really motivated. I don't want to say excited because I think I have apprehension about a lot of these subjects, but I'm really motivated today to talk with you about money and truth. And boy, it seems we could have many episodes in the future related to this, but let's at least begin a conversation about money and truth.
Boy, this is a tough one, Tom. There's that apprehension inside me because as soon as you start pointing it out, the people with money don't like that you're pointing out that that's the way that money is going, that money is influencing truth, and that powerful people with money can influence truth and influence decision making and influence economies and influence the criminal justice system, the political system, even businesses, can get influenced. The truth can, and decision-making can be influenced by, money. And it's just unsettling because the more you got, the more influence you get. And, it's kind of everywhere, but it's a little hard to have the courage to stand up to money when people want money. So let's take take this one out for a spin and really talk about how language and decision making can get influence around this, because this is a truth show about language, how language is used, and to influence it. So, in the news we have Jeffrey Epstein and his influence on truth regarding his money was to, dodge federal charges and admit to state charges in order to really not have any justice at all. So money influenced justice.
It certainly does appear that way. He got, I think what, most people would agree, he got a sweetheart of a deal in being punished, or having consequences for a conviction, having to do with, I don't think it was sex trafficking at that time. I think it was just, he was a sex offender, I guess.
You have to register as a sex offender.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, at least he had to do that. But he was serving time in jail, but he got to leave every weekday to go to an office to work. How he got that whole deal. And of course that took down one of Trump's cabinet secretaries because he was involved in arranging that deal.
That's right.
But clearly the money he has, and the influence of that money, impacted his truth for him in a better way. But I would think very much out of proportion with a person that does not have money.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And now it leaves the victims of the crime. Are they going to, and probably some attorneys already on this, are they going to do the class action or a class action suit and go after that prosecutor? Are they going to go after him or not? Can they do that? Are they willing to do that? Do they have the money and influence to do that? How will that be funded in order to do that? And what things are in place that, I'm sorry, you can't go after the prosecutor who botched it or basically broke the law, by not informing them of the deal. They kept them in the dark until after. They're not supposed to do that. Victims' rights. Does the victim have right? Well, money says no. Money says the victim didn't in that point. Money purchased truth, because, and it purchased justice in that case too, so.
Yeah, very sad. And of course, now that Jeffrey Epstein is dead, we see some of the victims starting to sue his estate and go after his money. That may be the best way that at this point they can seek truth and justice, by having, Jeffrey Epstein pay for it posthumously.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. See, if there's a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, put in place around things like this, money will actually not have as much influence, because a Truth and Reconciliation Commission would put the person on the stand in front of those victims, and those victims get to talk to that person that did the thing that they did. So, yeah.
Wow.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Because you know what? This is what Truth and Reconciliation is going to look like. There's restoration money, but the Truth and Reconciliation is, we're going to do something worse. Listen, buddy, this is how your actions influenced / ruined / affected my life, affected my family's life, affected my community. One of the biggest transitions that South Africa went through the Truth and Reconciliation commission and hearing, was to have the person that did the crime sit in front of the victim, and the victim gets to say, listen, this is what your decision did to my family. It took my son's life. It affected this thing. As another human being on the planet, this is how you affected me, by following orders blindly, by not standing up to injustice.
Yeah, and unfortunately or regrettably, the victims in Jeffrey Epstein's case won't have the opportunity to do that, to get themselves some personal reconciliation. They may achieve some financial reconciliation, but those people's lives are forever impacted in ways we can't even imagine, and it is very sad. When you just mentioned about the victims being able to speak to their to the what would we call the
perpetrator,
the
the person in action, the person that did the thing.
Right. We saw that happen in our recent history with the USA Gymnastics victims of Jeffrey Nasser, isn't that his name? Or I don't know if it's Jeffrey, but it's Nasser was the doctor's name. And I was really impressed how the judge handled that case and allowed, hundreds of victims to speak their piece. Now, this is not a money purchasing truth sort of thing in terms of directly in that case, although I do think USA Gymnastics had money that silenced their or kept those charges and accusations from coming to light for years.
Yes.
So maybe there was a purchasing of truth there to a degree in a defensive way.
Well, this is the remedy. The remedy of money purchasing truth is open reconciliation of, and having the legal course to affect truth through respect, through restoration of truth that's outside of the influence of money, because we may have noticed that money influences the criminal justice system. It just does. And so that's one of the biggest challenges that we have.
It definitely does. If you have money, you can buy a much better defense and have justice not impact you as much as it would others. I think that's very clear. And we've seen that for decades and decades, even in my memory, like especially when one of the Kennedy family gets in trouble with the law in some way, they have the money to hire the best attorneys and create their own truth to excuse what happened and usually get off without, a harsh consequence.
It allows proportionalization. I want to make a smaller perception or smaller impact on this, or I want to make a bigger impact. I want to make something bigger than what it is, or I want to make something smaller than what it is. So if I say, I want transparency, I want government to stand up, I want to make sure no stone is unturned, then I'm going to spend a year and a half on, the Benghazi tragedy.
Right.
A year and a half on the Benghazi tragedy. It's like, yeah, there was like mistakes made all over, but a year and a half on Benghazi? That's called amplification. I'm going to use money and certain systems to amplify something that I want to make look as suspicious all the way at the top. I want to stick the Secretary of State in a room for 18 hours or 11 hours or whatever she was and grill her just to get one talking point or one soundbite. And once they get the soundbite, they just run the soundbite.
Yeah. And that worked in their case. They succeeded at that.
Yeah. Yeah. And does Trump create those sound bites? But he creates so many sound bites that it just amplifies, and it's just like, throwing crackers at seagulls. I mean,
That's a mental picture. But, I've done that, like on a boat throwing crackers at seagulls.
Throwing crackers at seagulls. They'll go for them. It's not really particularly great for the seagull, by the way, because they, some of them, really don't do so well at the end of that experience. Just like human beings don't do good at going after every tweet that President Trump thinks, but Bush had his arm of influence,
Sure.
to deal with those things. Okay. All right. So now that we're taking a look at Jeffrey Epstein and looking at the justice system, it's if you take a bunch of entrepreneurs, risk takers, and you look for a risk taker to take it to just make something work in an environment that doesn't have in its own economy, and we take a look at certain cities and certain areas of the city that might be an area of color.
Right.
Well, if you take an entrepreneur, you stick them there, and they take a look at the resources that are available, and they're being resourceful with the resources they have available. Nobody's coming in there to set up a factory in, South Central.
No.
South Central Los Angeles. They're not doing that. Or, the thing about Baltimore that there's troubles because they've got to create an economy of their own, because the economy doesn't want to come to them. So they become resourceful. An entrepreneur then figures out how to do it, right?
Yeah, even if that entrepreneurial endeavor is on the wrong side of the justice system or the law, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's unfortunate.
Right. One of my favorite moments in the field of time as a presenter and as a person that teaches this stuff about how entrepreneurial and the risk-taking mind needs to take risks was a leadership conference I was speaking at, where a probation officer who was helping 35-year-old, 40-year-old men who had been in jail, who got put there at 20 or at 20, 21, 18, they were in jail because they had got convicted of a drug crime and were in jail for 20 years or so, and now they're getting out.
Right.
Well, this probation officer had 6 of them standing on stage, 6 of them. And their leadership was entrepreneurial leadership. I just happened to be the next speaker after that group of 6 incarcerated men of color. And as I spoke after them, one of the activities I do is hold up the entrepreneurial card, hold up what your personality style is. What is your leadership style?
Right.
And all of them had as they were all in the audience, I knew what they were going to hold up. All of them were holding up, holding up the entrepreneurial card. All of them were.
Okay.
Well, one of the guys that was sitting there, the LA Times called the Ray Kroc of cocaine distribution.
Wow.
Ray Kroc is the McDonald's.
Right. The guy who brought McDonald's to the world, really.
The founder.
Right.
The founder, right?
Right.
So this guy who's sitting in jail as a 20-year-old going like, who's Ray Kroc?
Mm-hmm.
So watch this. He got the book, Ray Kroc's autobiography.
Sure.
And started reading it in jail while he's there. He goes, I'm this guy. I'm this guy. This is the guy. That's who I am. I'm him. This is all these are the things I put together. I did it with cocaine, but so the LA Times, of course, called him Ray Kroc. The New York Times called him the Sam Walton
Really?
of narcotics for, Southern California. Who's Sam Walton? He's sitting in jail.
Oh,
He's reading a newspaper about himself.
really?
So he reads it. Now, here's where the story gets really funny. I'm watching him having this entrepreneurial card up. I get done my talk. All of them were, there. I'm coming down. I literally walked off the stage to one side, and he came running up to me. I mean, literally like a very light jog.
Yeah.
And he comes up, he's holding his card. He goes, I'm just this entrepreneurial guy. I go, yeah, you're an entrepreneurial guy. That's a man of color.
Yeah.
That's all you are. You just happen to be using the wrong product, but you are being resourceful with what your environment had to offer. You were just brought up in it. It was just the product that was the problem. And I go, please, I know you've been out for a little bit, but tell me, what are you up to now? He goes, well, actually, I was able to start a trucking company and I have 10 trucks already. I went, oh my God.
Thank goodness.
He's just building it in the environment. He's building it in. He's just going to build it, on the legal side of the fence instead of.
Oh, thank goodness. And that does show you that the truth and money relationship, that's quite something. Bill, I also was thinking as you're talking about this relationship and we started to talk in more of our political world. If I think to that Citizens United Supreme Court decision that said that money equals free speech,
yeah,
that seems to be related to this as well.
It is, and it's where I know that we're going to really have difficulty in getting publicly funded elections because that'll get rid of all the influence. It's like you get more dice at the table if the more money you have because you're just purchasing another dice.
Well, all of these super PACs, where even if the rules say the candidate, you can't donate all that money to the campaign itself. You can give all you want to a super PAC, and they're all over the media that are trying to purchase their truth, right?
Well, the Citizen United thing is purchasing truth. They're going to purchase truth by broadcasting influence. How do you broadcast influence? Well, you take money and you do three things: brand, market, sell. That's what you do. Brand it, make it look nice and clean. This is what our PAC looks like. Let's get a good logo. What are we going to call ourselves? United Americans for democracy.
Right.
You know, what am I going to promote? What am I going to market then? My version of that.
Sure.
Okay. How am I going to sell it? How am I going to sell it? I'm going to increase dopamine. How am I going to do that? Give them a reward, create anticipation of what it's going to be like, and create some uncertainty in order to get funding to move in my direction. Now, the online donors and the online funding, GoFundMe campaigns are doing that. There's almost so much time for this campaign. This is what the thing is going to be. This is where it's going to be. This is what the donation is going to be. And you get the opportunity to raise money online by doing a GoFundMe campaign. Well, what do the candidates have to do right now is, I need new independent voices, another new donor. Just why does a millionaire or a billionaire need your dollar vote? Because the democratic process is that, do you want me to have my voice spoken? And if you see that I'm advocating for you, then I'm coming. I'm going to advocate for that view. So that's I just thinking of Tom Steyer's last thing that I just saw.
All of them are doing that. All of the Democratic candidates, because the way that the Democratic National Committee has set up the rules for getting on the debate stage, you have to demonstrate that you have a certain number of donors. It's interesting how they've done that. They've made it so that it's not about the amount of money. Of course, they make up their own rules in this regard, right?
They are. That's right.
It's not about money purchasing truth at this stage. I think it gets very different when you get later in the race, or certainly in the general election. But you have to have a minimum number of donors in order to get on the debate stage. And the further we get in the debate season, the more donors you have to have. It's so how they're trying to weed out from this 22-person field, and there's a few that have dropped out, but not really very many yet.
Right, exactly. And the best part about it is that it's at least getting the small person's voice in the mix. I kind of like that guy. I want to put $1 in his direction. I think I want to keep his voice in for a little bit longer. I don't want his voice to leave so soon. Because it does. If the voice leaves too soon, then it's a little problematic. If the voice leaves too soon, and why is the voice leaving? Bernie Sanders went through that with Hillary Clinton. Why did his voice leave? Because the powers that be did not support his voice.
Yeah, and you can chalk that up really to superdelegates in the 2016 primary race, right?
Yeah, it's like, superdelegates. I mean, yeah, well, they're carrying more influence, but are they really carrying a message that's going to make a big difference? And it's so important is that you've got to, I mean, obviously, the Democrats have a lot of negative messages to bring up forward, but notice how successful negative messages were if towards, and the Republicans are just playing the negative message. And Tom, truth has a lot to do with how the brain is receiving and processing truth. The front part of our brain, the logic part of our brain, thinks it runs the show. The creative part of the brain says, oh yes, this is our best option. This is my logic center, and my from a metaphor standpoint, this is my future oriented brain, and I am voting for something. Meanwhile, what's really getting hijacked is the emotional part of the brain and the habit part of the brain that just needs to hear a repeated message. No collusion, no collusion, no collusion, no collusion, emotion, 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 no collusion. What's the emotion? I'm passionate about no collusion. But it's not true.
Right.
The brain that is hearing the message spoken in a passionate way, the brain that is hearing that this person is such an advocate that it's not real, that the listener believes the emotion over habit. It's not the logical truth. It's most certainly not what's best. That's called a future-oriented narrative. Here's what's best. Well, if we're using and applying what was best, what is a best practice, as a human species, we would be scouring the world for who does this better than we do. And let's just take that. Let's use our version of that. Or if we can't get to our version economically right now, let's steer the ship in that direction. We are not steering the ship in the direction of best practices.
No, definitely not. We definitely, hey, if it didn't happen here first, it's suspect, right?
Yeah. The biggest drain on businesses in America is the functioning processing, the dealing with medical insurances for their employees. They don't want to do it. They've never wanted to do it. They've just been forced to do it. If they had their choice, they would not want to do it. Businesses do not want to supply insurance, medical insurance, for their employees. They would want someone else to do it. It's labor intensive. It's cost. You got to take time to do it. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Who wants to read those for? No, just take care of my employees for me, please. Let them not think about their health care on my work time. Don't put them through those paces. I mean, it's anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. Businesses, they have entire departments of employees they have to hire and carry as overhead just to implement and deal with this. I mean, human resources, not to bash human resources. I mean, the HR departments are,
doing the best they can
because they have a lot of important jobs to do.
Yeah.
Taking care of their workers is important. But if you did have a national healthcare system, they would be working more in they're probably a lot more efficient, not to have as many employees.
Morale, skill assessment, training. They would focus more on training. Why? Because that would be more important. Why? No, they're stuck in the doldrums of, figure out what plan is best and what's most financially viable and what can they get away with in order to whatever.
Yeah, well, and they each have to reinvent the wheel of what this is within a company, and it's a little different in every company. Talk about a time suck.
Time suck, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I'll get off that little soapbox.
So yeah, these are really good. These are good moments, man. These are good moments. Okay. So notice how money and truth keeps coming back to the center of this piece, is that there's a money and truth piece. And with politics, we see it in Citizens United, that truth is being purchased by the person within the groups that have the most donors. And, is the money more on the left and more on the right? We can kind of debate that. Is the proportionality of that? Is the promotion of that, or what the person is standing for? Is the demonization of that different? Absolutely, it's different. We're standing in the right and they're standing in the wrong. Those people those billionaire people, those are the wrong, bad people. It's like, wait a minute, I think what they're fighting for is something most people would like. Anyway, so yeah, there's a very, 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 very important thing. Now, when the money of politics really gets a little unsettling is when it translates to real-time votes in real-time cities, in real-time influence that takes place over Congress and senators and this kinds of things. And the idea here is that, well, if I'm going to be a business and I'm dependent upon a vote to make my business work, I wonder how I could get more votes so when my funding comes up in Congress, that congressperson has to vote for me. Wow, I wonder how I can do that. Okay, so let's suppose, I'm making a plane. Tom, you and I we're gonna have a plane business,
Okay.
and the Congress has got to vote on a plane, a military plane.
Yeah. Who's going to make it for them?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I might not want to make my plane all in one district. I want to make my plane in a bunch of different districts. How about if I make the wing in one part of Wisconsin, and I make the engine in a different part of Seattle, and I make the different parts in other different districts, so that there's X number of jobs, 1,000, 2,000, 500, 3,000 jobs putting this plane wing together. And then I'm just going to truck that wing to the final place where the whole plane gets assembled. But in order to get all the votes to pay for that plane, I want to make the plane in all these different areas. Then I can get the votes, because then when the bill comes up for the military spending on that plane, they ain't going to vote against it because they're going to lose jobs.
Meanwhile, we may have made the plane twice as expensive as it would have been had you built it in one district. I'm sure there's all sorts of issues.
You're right. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. I can't, if I make the entire plane, if I ship all the raw materials to one spot and make it, I'm not going to get the votes for the plane to get the plane voted, because those different other voters, those other people, those other Congress people and senators are not going to be in that space. Okay, that's a American business. Now, has this happened?
Oh,
Yeah, it's
I'm
happening
sure
right
it's happened.
now.
I'm sure it's happened.
It's happening right now that votes are distributed, and businesses is distributed in various different states in order to get various different votes. Okay. How about for foreign governments? Let's suppose, I don't know, I'm a rich Chinese person, or I'm a rich foreign, Russian, or I'm a
Russian
rich
oligarch or something.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. How if I take a whole bunch of money and I want to influence American politics? Well, I got to get their votes. Well, why don't I throw a bunch of money at a place, at a part of the country that's kind of depressed, that's kind of hasn't seen a very strong economic growth, and no one really wants to go there. But I would get some votes if I could do that. Why don't I go to Western Kentucky and give $200 million to build an aluminum plant there? Why don't I do that? Gosh, that might stall a vote from Mitch McConnell.
That might do what now?
That might have Mitch McConnell not bring a vote to the Senate floor because $200 million is now in his state.
Oh, you mean prevent Mitch McConnell from preventing that kind of foreign investment or influence in the U.S. because it benefits him. Is that what you
So he might not bring a bill. He might not bring a bill to the Senate floor about election tampering from Russians. He might not do that, theoretically speaking. Not that this isn't happening right now, but theoretically speaking.
Listeners, you're going to want to check out the video at the blog post to see Bill's expression.
Just saying, so truth can influence, can be had, because they don't want to, now that they finally got the factory, or they're in the process of getting this factory, and there's the potential for being jobs, in that environment that the manufacturing has went away, but now I have money to bring it back and have that influence in that state, in Western Kentucky, where the economy went south, and I'm bringing all this money. Look at what Mitch did. He's able to bring economic growth to our state. And one of the things that we need to do as a country is we've got to slow down with the thought, by any means necessary. See that sentence? By any means necessary. By many means. Now, big companies, whether it's big companies or big government from other foreign governments that come in and do this, it's like when Mercedes comes in to put the largest Mercedes manufacturing plant in, I think was it South Carolina or North Carolina?
I believe it's South Carolina. Yeah.
They're the largest things. And Trump rails against, Mercedes or BMWs or whatever, and they have the largest one in the state. He is doing that partly from an unaware standpoint, but partly from he's just seeding the message against a influencer. Well, does that take Germany down in the eyes of Americans? Yes. But if you don't talk about Russians in the same way, well, then that actually benefits. See, there's a lot of chess pieces moving here. And money and our language influences, and our politics influences, and money influences the voice, and the voice influences money. And what we're doing right now is just gently creating some awareness about that process, and say, what are we going to stand for? Which way do we want it to do it in? Are we going to put civics back into the classroom? And are we going to teach civics all the way through? Or are we just going to completely drop it from our entire instructional system? Why are we not teaching that? Because it puts power. It teaches people that the way democracies run is that you individually have the power of your vote. But if you don't talk about voting ever in the instructional system, then people aren't going to think voting is even important. They're going to go to helplessness around it. And you've got to do something about what are we standing for, and what are we fighting for, and what that influence is for. And I'm still shaking my head a little bit. It's like,
well, boy, what you're pointing out, Bill, is this is a very complicated web of, a system that we have here in the U.S., which was built on very sound principles and very well intentioned. And this is why I think this is potentially one of many different episodes related to money and truth, and how money can purchase truth. And I think more of the problems associated with the fact that money can purchase truth so easily. And it can be disheartening for sure. But I like the idea, Bill, that through all these episodes we've been recording, you're helping me, and you're helping all of our listeners understand language better and how it's used in ways to purchase truth. And of course, like I said, Citizens United equated money with speech, which is language. So here this all ties together. So that I hope that more people are not so truth is not so easily purchased from our listeners. That's
Correct.
My hope.
That's my hope too. My hope too is that it's like, if a big food company, for example, if a big food company in Utah, big food company that's processing food,
okay,
and they run this town, and this food company is dumping pollution in the river, and it smells and it's causing health problems for people down the river and in the ecosystem, right?
Right.
It's just all kinds of problems, all kinds of problems. And the mayor and the government goes to the food company and says, listen, you got to clean this thing up. You can't pollute it. And the food company looks at the government agency and says, if you make us clean this, we are going to move our factory.
Right. I can see that happening.
I can experience it happening too.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's like the economy and the people that would work there, that threat of the jobs leaving that economy in that small city means nobody's going to come back, and who's going to take over this empty building, this thing. And now all of a sudden the economy that's built around that is really, really going to have some troubles to it. See, if government were in the place of working collaboratively with the environment, it would look at these different cities where people are and have a better future-oriented narrative that if this factory shuts down and if they move, what are we going to do to restore this place? What are we going to do to bring it back to life? What are we going to do to keep it alive? And if we don't do that well, and if nobody really cares about that northern, manufacturing city, then Flint is done. Flint, Michigan, who's going to want to restore that and spend the money that's needed to replace all the pipes, to put the water infrastructure back in place? Well, what was that all that infrastructure and housing and water put in place for? General Motors.
Sure.
So, in order to have the factory and the people there, and they went there until the businesses, and the bottom line says, you know what, if we just move it to this other country and we'll get the labor here, and their environmental constraints are not as hard as ours in the United States, and they don't mind the people working there, and the health issues and stuff, and taken care of, or that country has a healthcare system that we don't have to pay for.
Uh-huh.
Really, I wonder why those jobs are moving there. Well, the government is paying for the healthcare system, and the business doesn't have to pay for it. Wow. Again, Bill, this bigger view of truth and how the money and the relationship between the criminal justice system and the politics and do we want crime violence to go down? Do we really want it to go down? Okay, well, then just end the war on drugs. Let's end that.
Well, but
do that now.
But then you have this private industry of this very unique thing, I think, in the United States, of a privatized prison industry that all of a sudden won't have as much revenue because there aren't as many people incarcerated for marijuana, drug possession, or dealing, or all these different things that have been illegal. That's a whole nother issue. There's probably more issues around truth being purchased there in our system.
Well, yeah, it's the drugs. The problem with drugs is a mental health problem. It is not a criminal problem. It is a mental health issue. Drugs are a mental health issue, straight out. How do we know this? We've got tons of evidence, tons of measurable evidence. It is not drugs are not a failing of mental fortitude, not a failing of, a person's will. It is a mental health crisis, because a mentally a mentally healthy person will only use the prescription long enough until their body has healed itself, and then they ain't using it. Why am I using that stuff?
Right.
But for a person that has an underlying mental health issue, they're going to go back there and they're going to use it to medicate pain. Not the pain that it was originally a problem, but the other pain.
Right.
The pain of their childhood, their pain of their traumatic event, their pain of their, their abandoned father, stuff like that. They'll medicate that. Anyways, truth, money. You and I have had a fun time today. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get a little tired of running into the wall of this. The best part about this, Tom, is that if we go after this with empathy and compassion, if we're able to mourn the mistakes that we make, if we're able to face the losses called human life, and let's go there. Let's go to reconciliation, because then we can come up from the other side of it. And the candidate that does that best are the one that's going to make a big difference here.
I agree, Bill. Yeah, I don't want to get, lost in despair with all of the problems that we have. I mean, the reality is we do have a lot of issues that we do to work on. That's undeniable. But there is hope, and there is a path to, I agree with you, seeing things differently, and I like approaching it with empathy and compassion. Yeah.
We've got to do that, because, what do you do with apartheid? Approach it with empathy and compassion. These are people that took orders. How do you do, and all those different people. Now, the ones that are stuck in that belief structure, you want to get them out of society, because whether it's Jeffrey Epstein or any of these other characters that, are don't have the ability to stop damaging others, because he was a person that could not stop damaging others.
Sure. To put it mildly, yeah.
Yeah, he couldn't stop damaging others. He needed to be away from society. And I think there's ways to get that. Now it's going to reduce our prison population to about a third of what it is, but at least it'll be manageable. Now it will create another entire system over here for the people that are in between these people that really need to be locked up and these other people that need a greater mental health issues. But we need to breathe energy into that economy, because the economy is there. The mental health economy is there. But the question is that how we're going to spend for it and how we're going to get it to pay and get it to work better.
Sure. How do we move some of that money that's paying to incarcerate people and instead pay to get the people the support that they really need to be productive, happy human beings, right?
Yeah, exactly. So more to come on all this.
All right.
Tom, Tom, I think the next time our listeners will really enjoy being able to peel one of these things away, and let's just start peeking at what the path is forward to be able to mourn, and what would be something that the victims could do, and what this could do regarding things in the criminal justice system. What are things that the victims can do from politics? What are the things that voters can do to influence where they want to go? And what are the things that politicians can actually speak about so that they don't get stuck in the rut? And many of them are getting stuck at 1%, 2%, 3%. Why? Because they're not knowing how to differentiate. And I think talking about differentiation and truth, I think that would be really helpful for us.
I think that'd be great. It'll give us a bit of where the light is at the end of the tunnel. Where is the path forward, right?
Yeah. This is a very dark episode, but at the same time, there is a light at the end of this. And I think we can really kind of get there by just start to set that intention to move forward. Okay?
Okay, Bill. I look forward to that. Thanks so much.
All right. More to come. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode? If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth Podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.